Welcome back. We now start proceeding with the Athenian history videos that will discuss in somewhat more detail the history of Athens in and around what's going on with comedy and stage drama in general. Again, we will try to keep detail to a minimum for the periods that don't pertain directly to comedy as we're studying in the course, but it's important to at least understand the background of what brought Athens to the condition that it was in the 5th century BC when Aristophanes was producing his plays, and then also again later in the 4th century BC down into the 3rd century BC when Menander was writing. So if we see how that is all going, and we could see how Athens got to the way it was during Aristophanes' time, we can better appreciate the satire Aristophanes launches at them pretty mercilessly in his surviving plays. Okay, so we're going to go back again to the pre-Archaic period for Athens as to what mythologically Athens thinks was going on in the period before what we refer to as the so-called Archaic period, 800 BC and after. So as we said, in that period, the Athenians weren't obviously yet a very well-established city, but the Athenians claimed that their city existed for many centuries as a single city, pretty much an ongoing, continuous institution, all the way back from long ago, the days of the Trojan War. To stress the point that the Athenians had occupied the same area where their city was for that entire period without interruption or disturbance or any inappropriate conquest, either them against others or others against them. To make that point, the Athenians claimed what is termed autochthony. Now over here is the Greek word chthon. It's in Greek and it's in English. The word chthon in Greek means earth or land. And auto right here means same. So autochthony is the concept, as we described, that the Athenians always had the same city. That distinguishes the Athenians from other cities, such as the Spartans. Because if we're to reconstruct the history as the Athenians would like us to, the Spartans did, of course, exist as a city prior to the termination of the Minoan and Mycenaean ages, because obviously Sparta was the city that, under King Menelaus, that had the incident with Helen that had eventually spawned the Trojan War. Also, the son of Agamemnon, Orestes, eventually became king of Sparta. So Sparta was there, obviously. However, Sparta appears to have gone through the period of ceasing to exist as a functioning city during the Dark Age period, 1000 to, let's say, 900 BC, and maybe trickling into the 800s BC. Sparta essentially is reborn and refounded under its legendary founder Lycurgus, as described to us by the biographer Plutarch from the 2nd, 1st centuries BC. So Sparta pretty much ended for a time and then was reoccupied. And according to that construction of Greek history, they were reoccupied by children of Heracles, or the Heraclidae. And there were two different families that came in and rebuilt Sparta. And those two families end up producing the two families of kings that will ultimately produce the dual kingship government that defined Sparta, and in fact was unique in the ancient Greek world. But the point about that is that the Spartans essentially stopped and then got back going again. And that's what the Athenians challenge with the myth of autochthony, that they never went through that process. The other distressing thing from the myth is that the people who came in to reoccupy all these areas were known as Dorians. This is referred to by modern scholars as the so-called Dorian invasion, which essentially refers to some outside group of people who come in and retake over all of the abandoned cities in order to make new cities. The Dorians come into conflict with Ionians who were there previously, and the Ionians end up leaving the Greek world to travel eastward, to go over from mainland Greece eastward over to Asia Minor and to settle over on that west coast. So once again, we have essentially decay, death, revival, reoccupation, and such. And all of that is, again, the Athenians say that they never went through, that they, again, had been there all along. So the real particular point the Athenians wanted to emphasize with this was their relation to the Ionians. Because the Ionian, first of all, Doris and Ion were two mythical sons of the original leaders coming back in to establish all the different cities. There were 3 different tribes involved, and Doris and Ion were heads of 2 of them, and they were sons of a prior leader. These 2 give their names to the Dorians and the Ionians. So the Ionians end up splitting, basically. And the Athenians claim that they came to Athens, which was, of course, outside the influence of the Dorians coming down from north down to south. They bypassed Athens, basically. So the Athenians were safe. The Ionians came there, got onto ships at the Piraeus harbor, which is just slightly southwest of Athens, and from there travel over eastward in order to found the new cities. Because of that, the Athenians can claim a kind of political supremacy of sorts over those cities, saying that they were essentially the mother city that had spawned all of those cities. So although the Athenians did not actually rule them or command them like a despot of some sort, the Athenians did claim that they had essentially a long-established friendship with them, and that if those cities needed any assistance from the Athenians or were needed to provide assistance for the Athenians, that the Athenians should be able to call upon that relationship from the past to be able to keep their helpful relations with the Ionians going. Again, during the Peloponnesian War and afterwards in the 4th century BC, this old-time relationship between the Athenians and the Ionians will matter big time. So just to put this in geographic context, you should get your map out. When you look at your map, look for Athens, which is the eastern part of mainland Greece. And then look over east, the western coast of Asia Minor. You will see cities such as Ephesus and Miletus. Those are 2 of the most prominent cities along that eastern coast of the Aegean Sea. Those are included in the area called Ionia. And those are the cities, together with quite a few others, as well as the nearby islands, that the Athenians claim they have a sort of assumed prominence over. And therefore should be able to be assured of political assistance in either direction with those cities. Okay, so that's some of the early mythology related to the Polis of Athens. And when we come back to our next video, we're going to start moving down specifically into the Archaic Age and discuss a little bit more how Athens got established as a polis. We will see you next video.